Hello, my name is Katie Petrowski, and I'm a literacy consultant with the Michigan Department of Education in Lansing. I want to welcome you to the High Leverage Instructional Practices webinar. Today, we are going to explore explicit instruction and active participation strategies. As a reminder, for those that saw the welcome slide and for those that may have just joined us, for today, participant cameras and audio functions have been turned off, as well as the chat feature. However, you can still submit questions into the Q&A, and the host will receive them. While we cannot address every question sent today, rest assured that we will capture them and answer them to the best of our ability when we send out a follow-up document to this event. In addition, we will be taking one official break today, and unlike some of the other webinars in this series, our break today will be a bit of a shorter length at 5 minutes in order to get through the amazing information that we have for you. At this time, I would like to introduce our key presenter for today, Dr. Anita Archer. Dr. Archer is well known for her guidance on the design and delivery of explicit instruction, behavior management, and literacy instruction with both children and adults, and she's been doing this wonderful work for more than 40 years. We'd like to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Anita Archer.
Thank you, Katie. What a gift it is for me to be in Michigan. I so wish I was actually present in Michigan, but right now I'm at my home in Portland, Oregon. And so we looked at what has the highest leverage of making a difference for us to review for the school year starts, and it is explicit instruction. So my mottos for explicit instruction are these. Number one, how well we teach equals how well they learn. We know that the quality of our teaching is directly related to the learning of our students, and that we want to constantly lead students to the highest level of learning, and that means that we use the highest level of instruction. One day I was doing a presentation in Portland, Oregon, and Roland Good of Dibble's fame was there, and he said, Anita, I think there's a corollary that you should remember to how well we teach equals how well we learn. That afterwards, we could look at the students' performance and say how well they learn equals how well we taught. But it is this relationship. So today to Michigan, I am just so honored to be present. And this is how much I love Michigan. Not everyone can go down to their kitchen and have a Michigan glove. Yes, I do. I have a Michigan glove, and don't worry, it has the UP on the other side. So, and it's well used. And I said, wow, that is so cool. I don't have one other state glove available. So Michigan, this is for you. It reflects a book that I wrote with Charles Hughes on explicit instruction. The reason I put this up is that we have a website where there are short vignettes, and you might want to watch some of those that relate to the big ideas in explicit instruction. So first of all, you're going to participate. Just like when you do remote lessons or when you do in-class lessons, you want the students to participate. So the first thing I want you to do is get a piece of paper and everyone needs to replicate that on the paper. So I'm going to do it as you're doing it. So we will have a response sheet. I had you do this because we're going to use it throughout the session, but also because in your classroom, if you're physically distancing, if you're remote, if you are doing live lessons remote or recorded, this is probably one of your best bets for active participation. So we're going to use it throughout this session. So if you have yours done, hold it up now, no matter where you are. Yes, hold it up. I'm looking, I'm looking, I'm looking. Great. All right. So here's the other things that we are going to do. Sometimes I'm going to ask you to write down things, and on a piece of paper, you're going to put the term words best practices, could be on the back of your response sheet if you wish, best practices, and anything that you say, I want to remember this, this is important, make a note of it. But you also have access to all the PowerPoints. And sometimes I'm going to have you say answers, and they will be, you're muted, but I want you to talk into, as if I was there, talk into that screen. And similarly, we're going to read together. So read with me. I'm going to read, stop, and you're going to say a word. So do that with me. See, the major challenge if we have remote lessons is the transmittal differences between different computers and servers. And so you can't really get all the children to read together. So we mute them, and then when they're with us, we would look at them and see their mouth moving, and we would monitor them in that way. So you're going to use your hold up, and hold-ups are so powerful, particularly in remote teaching. And in one case, you're going to use fingers to show an answer, another way to do a remote hold-up. And the questions are not going to go in the chat box, they're going to go in the question answer box. And so this summer, we did a lot of work with remote teaching, and sometimes the students were home and they didn't have anything to, they didn't have a whiteboard at that time. So we actually had virtual whiteboards. They got some object that they could write on. They got a dry erase pen, and they used it. So the big idea is good instruction is always interactive. I say something, you say something, I write something, you write something. So even in this webinar, you're going to be actively involved. Well, what are my purposes here today for the beautiful state of Michigan? And one is just to affirm what you already know. So in this hour presentation and in the second half of it, you're going to say, I do that. I always do that. And sometimes we just need to be reminded. Maybe we once used hold-ups. Hold up your fingers, hold up your whiteboard, but we haven't been doing it. So we just need to bring that back into our consciousness. And I hope to expand on some of your ideas. Certainly in the second half, you're going to be amazed at what teachers have done with this knowledge, and you can expand in that way. And finally, would have some idea how you can apply it when school, in whatever platform or form is going to happen, will occur. So you're going to be reminded of the elements of explicit instruction, and you're going to be thinking how they would be applicable to your own classroom or your own school. We're going to just embed and infuse some ideas about remote instruction and classes with physical distancing as we go. All right, the whole high leverage focus is on explicit instruction. But here is our goal. Every single person who is attending today, teachers, paraeducators, special ed teachers, administrators, we all have one goal, and that is to ensure that our students are learning. That in every class, every day, they are learning, 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 and more learning. We have to keep our eyes on the focus, on the target, which is learning. No matter how we're opening our schools, this is what is necessary. This is what our children cry for. This is what is going to be really motivating to them is I am learning. And, you know, this summer, I had time to reread and read many books. And this statement by Fullen sort of summarizes what all of us in all of our roles have to remember. I'm going to read when I stop, you say the word. No system or district in the world has made significant gains for students without a relentless focus on the learning and teaching process. No matter what our situation is, we have to focus on what do we need to do in terms of teaching that will make the most difference in terms of learning. It's basically our moral imperative. Never in my 54 years of teaching have we been in so much need of moral imperatives in all walks of life, including education. And as Fullen said, the moral imperative in education consists of a deep commitment to raising the bar and closing the gap of learning for all students. That is the equity that we are striving for, that all students will learn at their highest level. And so we are going to do that when we teach in the classroom, when we teach in the classroom with physical distancing, when we teach in the classroom with recorded lessons, and when we have distance learning that is live instruction. It doesn't matter the platform, it's still, our goal is learning to raise the bar and close the gap for all students. And here's some guiding principles that I've really been stressing during this pandemic. And one really important one is this: good instruction is good instruction. Way back in March, I got a phone call from a teacher in Michigan who I had met a number of times in Kalamazoo. And she called up and said, Anita, I have to teach remote lessons and they have to be live remote lessons and I don't know how to do it. And I said, ooh, calm down. You know what is good instruction. You know that you would present a goal, that you would have demonstration, that you would have guided practice, that you would have checking for understanding. You would have a close to your lesson. She said, yeah, I know that. I said, well, you're going just to apply all of your knowledge to whatever platform you get to teach under. And she said, oh, would you help me? So for a number of months, she would send me lessons. We would talk about lessons, and it was totally delightful for me. And then it happened that I did this for many school districts, opening up in the spring and in summer with different options. But let us not forget, you know what's good instruction. We just need to employ it to have the highest level of learning. And one thing I see is so much focus on technology that we are forgetting to take time to write really wonderful lessons that respect what we know about pedagogy and what we know about learning. So put your attention back on good instruction and how you might do that very good instruction, and a little less on technology, because that will be powerful for our students. And what I have learned over time, and particularly this period of time working with districts, doing remote instruction, doing remote recording instruction, and that is keep the structure predictable, no matter how you offer it. So that if you're doing remote lessons and a child comes on for a math lesson, they know that the teacher is going to greet them as they come in. The teacher is going to do review of previous problems due now so that this teacher can maintain what they've taught. The teacher is going to introduce the target or objective for the day. If it's new, the teacher is going to do demonstration, guided practice, checking for understanding, and have a formal close to the lesson. Predictable, simple. This has power in terms of the instruction and subsequent learning that occurs. Just two more little things. Remember this. I've been studying a lot of cognitive science, and these are my two big takeaways. What they think about is what they learn. What they think about is what they learn. And so I want to teach, no matter the platform, I want to teach so the students are focused on the most important information. And, oh yes, you know, I'm just looking out at my window. I have a woodpecker pair that's out there drumming away right there at the branch. It's probably not 10 feet from me. See, now all of you are thinking woodpeckers. You are not thinking good instruction because I took your attention away. And I did it intentionally, but there is the woodpecker. And so I might have to send you my videos of the woodpeckers over time. Okay, back to here. So you want them to be thinking about math or reading or science or social studies or music or art. Then you need to keep their attention on that. What we think about is what we learn. And one little reminder about motivation. This is my favorite equation emerging from the research on motivation. That first, if I'm going to be motivated, I have to have success. And then I have to believe that it's important, it's of value to me. And then I am very willing to be motivated and put extra energy into it. Good instruction is good instruction. Critical for us to remember. Focus on learning and teaching, not just technology. What we think about is what we learn. And if I want them motivated, I'm going to have to teach so well that they're successful and they know it is of value. Well, with that background, let's leap on systematic instruction. Okay, teacher talk for a moment. Notice that my cursor is like a laser. Like some of you have had PowerPoints up and you use your laser to get someone's attention. But notice my cursor is bigger than normal because I learned that you can make the cursor big, 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 big. So go on and find out how to do it for your computer because it's very useful if you end up having to do remote lessons to direct kids' attention. That is your first technological hint of the day. And guess what? I just did it yesterday. So explicit instruction is not random. It is what, everyone? Systematic. And it really tells us what we need to do in terms of the design of our lessons, but also in terms of their delivery. In our book, we wrote down that explicit instruction is meant to be unambiguous. In other words, you get it. We're not going to hide the light behind the podium. We're going to teach in such a way you get it. And it is thus a very direct approach. So this webinar is dedicated to explicit instruction. And this was a new book that just came out, and it said in the last sentence, it's a teaching model that progresses from I do to we do to you do. And that is a gradual release of responsibility. I demonstrate, we do it together, and then you do it. I was reflecting on, I just pulled out a book I wrote in 1974, a chapter in it on instruction, and I, at that time, coined these terms, I do it, we do it, you do it. Now they're ubiquitous, they are everywhere, but they are powerful because they announce what we would need to do in all cases, and it is the heart of explicit instruction. So I'm asked this, in fact, this week I've been asked this many times, is when should we use such direct instruction? When should we use instruction that is unambiguous? When should we use I do it, we do it, you do it? And we know from research exactly when we would want to do that. And one is when the students have little or no background knowledge. Well, I'm talking to teachers who teach K-12. All of you have experiences where the kids have little or no background knowledge. So we have kindergarten children arriving and they're going to learn letter sound associations so they can sound out words. and they have little or no background knowledge. I have students coming into biology where they're going to study cells in our first lessons and compare plant and animal cells. They have little or no background knowledge. In fact, they're still thinking cells are cell phones. So this would be a call for explicit instruction. When children are novices, and thus they have little or no background knowledge. So one thing that I did during this pandemic is that I took up cello again and played my cello. And I am a novice with little background knowledge, and I needed very explicit instruction. And when information is new, we benefit from explicit instruction. And anytime we've had difficulty in the past, thus we need to experience success, we benefit from explicit instruction. Basically, if you look at this, there's not a general ed or a special ed teacher or an interventionist that is watching that says, oh yeah, I have kids who don't have knowledge, are novices, it's new information, and some of them have difficulty, I'd better use explicit instruction. Some of you are very familiar with the work of John Hattie, who I find particularly useful because he takes many, many studies, his team of researchers, and they come up with a effect size based on the question asked in those research studies. And the zone of desired effects on effect size, a statistical term, is between 0.4 and 1. Well, explicit instruction has a high effect size. It works. A similar direct instruction, high effect size, it works. Mastery learning, high effect size, it works. So when we thought of high leverage, it is explicit instruction comes to mind because all aspects of it have high effect sizes. Well, let's just do a little firm up. You ready? Okay, I'm going to read it. You're going to put your finger on agree or disagree. Be ready. The critical elements of good instruction are consistent across grade levels and content. Agree or disagree? Okay, the panel all agrees, and I certainly do. That is why I can be talking right now to preschool teachers, primary, intermediate, middle school, high school, because the elements of good instruction are researched consistently across grades, across populations, however, how we actually utilize them with our content would differ by grade level. And our goal within any lesson is completion of the activities listed in the pacing guide. Show me. Okay, my hope is your finger is on disagree, because it is not just completion of activities. The outcome is learning and more learning and more learning. Explicit instruction is critical when students are novices in a domain, having little or no background knowledge, and show me. Absolutely, that is the time when we really need to have very direct instruction that is very obvious. And last one, to increase students' motivation, their desire to engage in lessons and put forth effort to learn, students must experience success and see value in what they are learning. And show me. Excellent, agree, perfect. Teacher talk. I'm showing you many kind of activities that you could incorporate if you end up ever doing remote teaching, whether they're recorded lessons or they're live lessons. And this is a perfect one to utilize the response sheet and have quick sentences they agree or disagree with. Well, when we look at explicit instruction, which I have to tell you is a big topic, and so even as I wrote this PowerPoint, I said, oh gosh, this is more slides than we can cover in an hour. And so if I skip a slide, you'll just have to skip with me and say, I'll have to read it when I have all the slides in front of me. Oh, it is a problem with Archer, always thinking that she can cover much more. So when we look at explicit instruction, we know that we have to be selective in terms of the content we teach. And then we have to design lessons that are organized for the students and focused on critical content. And one of the most critical things, it doesn't matter how I am delivering the instruction, but the delivery makes a difference. Getting responses, monitoring, giving feedback makes a huge difference in students' gains. But they also need practice. So we're going to touch the big ideas. And when you reread the slides, you'll capture some of the additional details. Let's look at content first. And what do we know about content as an aspect of explicit instruction? Well, read it with me and go. Let me get my cursor. Don't you love that cursor? Okay, and read it with me and go. Focus instruction on critical content. Critical content. Teach the stuff and cut the fluff. Boy, our students have lost at least 3 months of instruction. And we need to thus be even more intentional to be certain what we are teaching is going to make a difference. Now, one of the big movements across Michigan, across the United States, has been on optimizing our instruction on reading to ensure that students by the 3rd grade are fluent, accurate readers. And so we're looking at all of our curriculum and saying, what is critical? And one thing we teach is what is called word learning, word level reading, decoding. Can they read the words? And we know exactly what we need to include there. Phonemic awareness, so they can hear the sounds and manipulate them. That they would know phonics, letter sound associations, and the ability to apply that knowledge to figuring out words. That they would need to build up instant recognition of as many words as possible. And thus they would have more fluency, which would be that they are accurate, that they have appropriate rate, and they have expression. But in order to have good comprehension, not just the ability to read the words, but they also would need comprehension of our language, particularly vocabulary and background knowledge. So here we have a body of knowledge that guides us every day as we are teaching reading and what is essential. And then we have Michigan standards. And so this is popped out from your Michigan standards. But one of the things we need to do is, if we're going to do critical content, is we be selective. So think with me. So in 6th through 12th grade, the students are to learn how to write an argument and how to write informative text and how to write narrative. And this is the kind of decision that we have to make. We have to ask ourselves, what's most important? And which one do I want to put on effort, particularly at the beginning of the year and then throughout the year? So I want you to put your finger on it, teach your talk. When I teach remote lessons, I'm always having the kids touch the screen. Easy way to have them make answers. So would it be on arguments or informative or narrative? So reach out, touch your screen. Which one would you teach first? Now, I know that there's some language arts teachers who might disagree with me, but here was my thinking. I want to teach most critical content. I'm going to start with informative. Why? Well, because the ability to write informative paragraphs, informative reports is something they're going to be able to use throughout their schooling, 6th through 12th grade. And in the workplace, they would use it And so it is going to be my first goal to work on and to review throughout the year. Now, I would then move to arguments because it has the same organization, a opening, a body, a conclusion, or an introduction, a body, a conclusion as informational text. Now, narratives, I would put third, simply because how often are you going to use that? Not as often as informative and arguments. I want to empower you with what you're going to use. So we got to make decisions about critical content. And we also know that if it's difficult, we better break it down into obtainable steps. So here's just some recent examples. I was working with a district reviewing early reading. And so we looked at sequences broken down so that the students could learn them over time. This is from that young woman in Michigan. So we went through and looked at the units she taught in math and broke it down into obtainable pieces. This is an example from teaching social studies. That first the students would be able to name the branches. They would be able to tell the functions of the branches. They'd be able to compare the functions. They'd be able to tell the limitations and then understand balance of power. So breaking it down into obtainable pieces so that I do not have like too much information coming in, cognitive overload. So content, critical, broken down. And then we have the design of instruction. And not surprising, the research on instruction shows that those teachers, those value-added teachers that have organized, focused lessons are likely to make the most difference. Well, you know that. All of us have had an experience where we've taught a very organized lesson, very focused, and the students had brilliant learning. We've also, every single one of us have had the situation where we were less prepared and it was less organized, less focused, and the students were confused and didn't learn it. We all know this from our own experience. And so what might we want in an organized, focused lesson? Well, in the work with Charles Hughes, one of the things we did is we read every article we could find on lesson plans. And they were all consistent that the lesson would have everybody an opening, that they would have a body, and that they would have a closing. And so that is that kind of predictable structure that I mentioned earlier that we could do no matter our presentation. We even then looked at, well, what would you see in an opening and in a closing particularly? And so a very simple view of this is in the opening, no matter what the platform is, I'm going to grab your attention. I'm going to go back and have some review, and I'm going to preview. I'm going to preview the objective, the target of the lesson. So a short opening. And then a closing. Now I have to tell you, observation studies find that closing is absent from the majority of lessons taught in elementary, middle school, and high school. We sort of end our classes with this. No, our time is up. Clear off your desk. We're out of here. And storm the door is not a closing. So, and we do that in remote lessons too. I'm going to try to be certain I have a closing because you'll be watching for it, where I could go back over the big ideas. I could tell you what we would do in the next lesson, or in this case, the next webinar. I could even assign independent work. But a structure is useful to the students. They know what is going to occur in the lesson, but it's really helpful to the teacher because as I'm planning, I can say, what review am I doing? What is the goal of the lesson? How am I going to review at the end? What are we going to do in the next lesson? What assignment am I going to give? So it is useful to both parties, the learners and the teachers. Well, if we dive in and look at the research on elements of explicit instruction, we find that there are other things that are important to the design, and they're not going to surprise you. We just have to be reminded to do it. And one of them is, and read it with me, and go. Begin lessons with a clear statement of the lesson goals. And so, boy, we've taught this in my 54 years of teaching. It's been given many different titles. So we had behavioral objectives. We had behavioral objectives that turned into I can statements, I will statements. Sometimes teachers had like I hope statements. I was working in Ohio yesterday and they talk about targets. Today, many books are written about goals stated as learning intentions and success criteria. I've not found any studies that found that one of those methods was better than another, but many studies to show that telling the students the goal of the lesson, telling them the learning intention, telling them the target has a very high effect size. Look at that. The children need to know what we're going to teach. And so let's just look at one example. So I was teaching, getting kids prepared to read this article, and the learning intention one in terms of vocabulary was that students will understand the meaning of key vocabulary words and use the words correctly. I like this because I could use that learning intention again and again and again, only the words would change. Don't we love something that is high outcome and low prep? I just would have to type in from where. So that day, I used learning intention and a success criteria. And the success criteria was that they could know that they learned it if they could select the critical vocabulary word when given the meaning, and that they could generate and write sentences. So that day, these were the words that I taught. And I'm going to quickly echo read. So when I say it, you immediately repeat it. Frigid, frigid, treacherous, triumph, uninhabited, expedition, labor, dismantled. Okay, I'm going to tell you about one of these words. You're going to lay down the fingers that represent the word. And when I say show me, you're going to show me. So I am thinking of a word that is a synonym for the word job. High in the air, show me. I'm waiting for the last person there. Raise your hand. All right, good. Now I actually did that because holdups, that response sheet, that whiteboard we hold up, that hands that we show an answer, some of the very best research done on active participation are holdups. So that day I checked their understanding, utilizing the activity we just did, and they had to write a sentence that included 2 of the words. So, but the objective was very clear, this time in learning intentions and success criteria. And then we have review. We look back and say, what do we need to know for this lesson? What have I taught in the past that is necessary? What are the pre-skills that are necessary? And I'm going to review them. We have many studies to show that those teachers that have the highest gains from their students consistently have review that has embedded in it student responses. They're not just sitting there passively listening to the teacher regurgitate. They are asked questions. They have to retrieve information during that review. And then we have the instruction. These are the steps that we see, particularly if we taught a new skill, that we are going to have a step-by-step demonstration, and I do it. And then we are going to carefully guide the students in doing it. And then we're going to check their understanding before they work totally independently. I do it, we do it, you do it. Many times, if it's very complex, it's more like I do it, we 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 do it. Gradual release of responsibility. We do it, we do it, we do it, you do it. Such simple words. I do, we do, you do. Such powerful teaching. Powerful teaching. And yet sometimes I see teachers who do I do, you do, and they leave out the we do, the most powerful part. I've even seen occasionally you do. Open your book to page 42, do set A, B, C. And not surprisingly, many students aren't successful. This year, this period of time where I took up my cello again, and I do virtual lessons with David, a great teacher, and he does I do, we do, you do. And oftentimes I model playing those measures. We play them together, we play them together, we play them together. I'll see you next week. We play them together, we play them together, because I am a special ed cellist. So it takes a lot of we do's till we get to you do it. But it's useful to us to remember this. Now, I'm not going to go to every detail here, but I wanted to have a sheet that you could look at that would look at, well, what happens during the I do it? Well, I show you how to do it. I tell you how to do it. What happens during the we do it? I'm going to guide you. This is the step I tell you and you do it. This is the step I tell you and you do it. I'm going to guide you through it. And then you're going to do it on your own as I watch you, as I look at you to determine if we can go to independent work. So more details for you to make a little slide for yourself to guide you. And you know, I want you to know that there's more than one way that we could articulate I do it, we do it, you do it. For example, many of you are having students in your classroom or remote lessons, having them read text, whether it's narrative or informational text. Well, then when we look at it, before they go to read, you're going to get them prepared. You're going to teach them vocabulary. You're going to teach them background knowledge that they need. You're going to illustrate the purpose of the lesson of what they're reading. And then they're going to read it. And you're going to use strategies such as choral reading or closed reading, or if you're in a classroom, partner reading, if you're not physically distancing. And you're then going to focus their attention by asking them questions. And then after reading, you might have a discussion. You might have them summarize. In fact, that one is really well researched. Or you might have them write in response. But it's still a gradual release of responsibility. From the teacher teaches it, we read it together, to you respond to the content. All right. Well, let's do a little check. Get ready. And agree, disagree. State standards should be prioritized, putting more instructional time and review on critical power standards. Yes, the Michigan standards all look the same when you look at the standards, but we need to go through and find the power strand. To enhance acquisition by novices, critical content should be broken down into obtainable pieces. Put your finger on. I totally agree. So that the students have much more chance of learning it when there is not too much information coming into working memory. The goal of the lesson should always be framed as learning intentions. Okay, I snuck that in there just to say, they need an objective, and it could be done with learning intentions. It could be done with a target. It could be with an objective. It could be an I can statement. As long as they know what they're learning, and it's reiterated throughout the lesson. When introducing a new strategy, the lesson that I'm observing should always include I do, we do, you do. Okay, now there's some difference of opinion there, but I put this in there for a reason. If I'm watching one lesson, I might not see all these steps. Monday, I'm introducing it. I do it, we do it. But they're not ready to go on. Next day, we do it, we do it, we do it, we do it. Next day, it's a complex strategy. We do it, we do it, we do it. The next day, we do it, you do it. It could be over time. Important because so often I look at observations that say all three should be done. And when students are learning new strategies or bodies of knowledge, discovery activities will increase the motivation of novices. Actually, research would say that is not true, that success, which is more likely to come from explicit instruction, is going to bring about motivation. All right, well, content, design of lesson with I do it, we do it, you do it. And let's look at the delivery. Now, I put a lot of slides in the delivery for you to read later because the first big idea is that you're going to require frequent responses. Good instruction is always interactive. I'm in the classroom with children. The pandemic is over. They're going to say things, write things, do things. I'm in the classroom and we're having physical distancing. Still, as I teach, we're going to say things, write things, do things. I'm teaching a live lesson and I'm going to request that children say things, write things, do things. I'm teaching a remote lesson. They have to pretend that they are present with the teacher. And I am going to have them have a response sheet, touch answers. I'm going to have them say things. I'm going to have them speak out loud because the only way they're going to learn is to give frequent responses. So let us add some information to it. Let's look first of all just at opportunities to respond. 0.79 as the effect size. Oh my goodness, it makes a difference in learning. And here's what we know, is that if your responses go up, no matter the platform, so does time on task. As the responses go up, so does the learning. The benefit, however, is not just those two. As the responses go up, management problems go down. And we know for all of you who happen to be special ed or interventionists, that it is the really important way to intensify intervention is to increase the responses. Now, there's many things that I could tell you about responses. We could spend 3 or 4 days talking about it. But I want to emphasize the big ideas. One, it works. As responses go up, so does on task, so does learning. And in all parts of your lesson, this is sort of, again, looking at the opening, the body, and the closing. When I am reviewing, I can get responses. I can have you repeat the goal of the lesson, get responses. When I do it, and we do it, and you do it, I can get responses. When I do review at the end and a preview of what we're doing tomorrow and assign independent work, I can get responses. So it can occur across all aspects of the lesson. And we have a good idea of what things work. So this is a chart of research validated practices, verbal responses where I'm going to have you say something, written responses where I'm going to have you write something, and action responses. Now, I gave you slides on each of these, and the point is actually that the platform makes the most difference in terms of responses. For example, in a classroom, we can say short responses together. If I am on a virtual lesson with you that's live, I can have you make short responses. If I have a recorded lesson, I can ask you to talk into the screen and we can do short lessons. However, when it comes to partners, I can have partners in a classroom post-pandemic, but I can't have partners sitting right next to them and doing turn and talk and whispering in each other's ears when we're right in the middle of a COVID-19. So that one has to be altered. A new situation has to be used. So we do have to consider how to alter the responses in a pandemic. So as you look through this, what you're going to find is I talk about the response and if it needs to be modified. So we're going to just do a little preview of what you could be doing on your own. So for example, choral responses, where the answers are short and the same, we could use in all possible environments. However, important, if I am teaching remote lessons and I ask the students to say something together, for example, if I asked you, we're going to ask, and you said question, you have to have the students all muted because we cannot get the timing of all of their voices together. So then you're going to watch the actual mouth move of the children to be certain that they're on task. Same if they are looking down and you have to have a signal for them to say an answer. So I might say, look at your paper, read the first word when I tap. It's a very good signal for any remote lesson. But again, got to have the kids muted because you cannot get glorious choral responses on any remote platform. You would want partners, but you can't use partners in physical distancing or remote learning. Now, these are the directions for an alternative partnership, and let me just explain, because we've used this and it's like really great. So when I have remote distancing, or I am teaching a remote lesson, and I say to myself, I can't do partners because they can't be together, but I want them to have the social interaction with others. So I do assign partners. And every week there's these two children together and these two children, even though they're separated during social distancing, or they're separated because they're in, one's in their bedroom and one is in their kitchen in remote places. But when I ask a question, and I am teaching remote lessons, I give them a chance to think, and then I call on a student, and the student gives an answer, and then if they want to, they could say, partner, help me out. They know their partner for the week, or I can, as a teacher, say, partner, do you agree with your partner? Do you have something to add to your partner? So they have an opportunity to have the social connection, but they're not physically next to each other. And this is the kind of thinking that I've been doing, the thinking that you're going to have to do to make this work. And so just to give you an example, if the stars are there, it can be modified and used remotely or with social distancing. So that's why the stars are there. So we could whip around or pass, and we could do it in a remote way where all the students' cameras are opening. I call on one child, they unmute and give a short answer. Then I look at the screen and call on another nearby child, so I can adapt it to that. Whiteboards, all hold-ups can be used in all situations. I'm teaching in a classroom, they hold up their whiteboard. I'm teaching them remote lessons live, they hold up their whiteboard. I'm teaching remote lessons recorded. I'm going to have them pretend I'm watching them and they hold it up. I just have them do the same things as if I was present. Same thing with response cards. Same thing with those response sheets. I hope that you like those because these have really made a difference. Same with hand signals, thumbs up, thumbs down. I can use across all of the different settings. Showing answers with hands, all settings. And then we have written responses. They could do it with their whiteboards and hold it up. But I would suggest that all of you get very, very good and skilled at having the kids being able to type in responses with Google Docs or to a Google Classroom. This will be some time before school starts, maybe just a few days, but you really should master this, particularly if you teach students 4th grade and above, and they're going to be doing many responses. And so this is just ways to scaffold written responses, because what we found is during lessons where we're using longer responses, students often need scaffolding. They could have scaffolding in terms of writing frames where they copy and then they complete the sentence. But we're going to put up 25 of them on the resources so that you can look and see if those might be helpful to you. Another possibility is from a book that is called Writing Revolution. Highly recommend it. They could complete sentences that all have different connections because, but so, a great way to have them do written responses during the You Do It segment, or they could expand sentences. There's so many things we could do in writing, but they're going to have a little alteration, because usually in the classroom you can walk around and look at it, but you know, teachers, you're going to have a teaching arena, and you're going to have to not be walking around so that we're all safe. So we need alternatives as they type in their answers, send them to you electronically. They could make gestures in all situations, facial expressions, all situations, and they could read. So whisper read and echo read, choral reading, you're going to read them yourself, and then we're going to monitor. Now, in our classrooms, we're able to monitor by doing walk around, look around, talk around. But let's say that we're in a classroom that we're physically distancing. Can't do that because the teacher needs to be safe, and they need to stay in their teaching arena, and the kids need to stay in their instructional little area. So this is something that has been very powerful. It's as simple as 3, 2, 1. What we're using in physical distancing and in remote live instruction. Very simply, you're going to make a list of the students' names. And then when you call on one child and they unmute so they can say an answer, or they stand up in the classroom and say an answer, you are going to have the list of names, and next to it, you're going to write a 3 if they're accurate, a 2 if they're accurate but not immediate, and a 1 if they're inaccurate. So one child might have for that day in reading a 3, a 3, a 2, a 3. And you say, oh, they are doing very well. Another child might have a 2, a 1, a 1, a 1, a 2. And you say, uh-oh, red flag. So you're going to have that ongoing data to be used with the whole class to change what you do, as well as for your feedback on how well you're teaching. But then you'll also have the numbers after their name to be certain that you are distributing the monitoring. Because we don't want to leave out children. We want equity. We want everybody to be involved. So try this out. The teachers were astounded about how it improved their instruction to have this ongoing data, but also allowed them to be more equitable in calling on kids. So we're monitoring. And we're given feedback. And so I'm skipping here a little bit, and you're going to skip with me. So we're going to give feedback. And in all situations, we can give feedback to the whole group. We can also, when we call on individuals in class, we can give feedback to those individuals. And so as I am teaching a lesson, maybe it's a remote lesson, I say, Jason, give us an answer. Jason unmutes, shares his answer, and I give him feedback. And it could be affirmation or praise. It could be encourage. Look at that sentence again. Let's do that together. Or it could be a correction. And so I guide him to the correct answer. But we're going to give feedback. When the students respond, feedback to the whole group, or when we're working with individuals, feedback to individuals. Well, thus explicit instruction. It's very complex, but it's all things we know that we need to put in action. And we're going to deliver our instruction with a brisk pace, but not frenetic. Today I felt a little frenetic here on this webinar. Oh, slow it down, be more intentional. And I just laugh because the best research on brisk pace was it helps to be prepared. Absolutely, and to avoid digressions. Yes, I almost took you again out to the woodpecker. His name is Woody. Yes, and so stay there. But we're also going to give practice practice. We're going to put up some modules on practice. We might even do a session someday just on practice. Practice that is deliberate, where we tell the kids the goal of the lesson, remind them of that, they work towards that. One that is retrieval practice, where we ask them questions, just like I did with you, where you had to retrieve the information. Or space practice, where it is spread out over time. I put in here just a quick review for you to check yourself off in terms of what makes a difference. So that is for you. So you had best practices and into the question and answer. As we are finishing this up and I'm also answering questions, I want you to put in what you thought was the best practice. So put it in the question and answer. This is feedback to me of what you thought was most useful. But I'm going to turn it back to Katie. We have just 2 minutes left. But did we have any questions that came through already that you'd like me to answer?
Yes, thank you for that wealth of knowledge, Dr. Archer. We've had, thank you. We've had many wonderful questions come through the Q&A, which we will address as a follow-up document after the webinar. I know that you've touched base on some of the answers to these, but at this time I have a couple of questions that we've noticed trending from our guests today.
Great.
The first one is, do you have any insight in regards to how teachers can assess students that they don't know at the beginning of the year if they start remotely?
So they are starting remotely and they don't know the students, and how might they assess them?
Yes.
And boy, there is a tough question, because most of our assessment would require that we met with individuals, and we might not have that possibility. So then you say to yourself, what could I do that I could do with a group of students that would give me some information? For example, if I had second graders and I was doing language arts, and I said to myself, okay, I'm going to start by actually giving them a spelling test, because spelling is going to indicate for me their knowledge of letter sound associations. And then for the students that have many errors, seem not to know letter sound associations, then I'm going to make a scheduled appointment with them, and I'm going to have them read to me on their own and so I can have an assessment of it. And so it's that kind of thinking that we have to have. What can I do as a screener with the group? Then what can I do as a follow-up with individuals?
Great, thank you so much. The next question is, if I do a recorded lesson, how can I have active participation with my students?
So I've done many recorded lessons, and I start by saying, hi, I'm Dr. Archer, and you are my students. And you are entering this where you're going to do pretend. You're going to pretend that you're in my class. You're going to pretend that you are like the very best student in my class. You are going to talk out loud. You are going to write things down. You're going to do things. So if I say, read what is on the screen with me, and I put my cursor under it, and I say begin, best practices. As I say it, you're going to say it with me. So you're just going to have to pretend that right behind your screen is Dr. Archer. And you're going to, because learning requires that you say things, you write things, you do things. So that is exactly what I do.
Thank you. And the last question that we'll address live here today is about how many minutes would an online lesson be when using explicit instruction and active engagement? So this is a live session that you're doing with your students. About how many minutes would that lesson be?
Well, so that again depends a little bit on the content and the age of the students. Most of the lessons that schools are doing are 30 to 45 minutes. Now I just did an hour, and I hope I kept your attention and involved you by thinking about when to place active participation and how to do it. 30 to 45 minutes. Now, just one little reminder is that so many people are going to end up going to remote lessons, either live or recorded. And one thing I see is sometimes we're forgetting what we do at the beginning of the year. What do? You teach rules and expectations. You teach routines and practice them. Well, that's what you're going to do as you start your remote lessons. You're going to introduce behavioral expectations before they are remote, during the time they're remote, after. And I know that your technical group has done some work on helping you out on this. But we'll also send some slides to put up on ours, Katie, that could be used. But you teach routines. Like if I'm teaching live and I want to call on kids and unmute, then I have to introduce how to unmute. And so then I have to have them practice mute, unmute, mute, unmute, mute, unmute, so we can do it fast. It's all about teaching, just like the beginning of the year, rules and routines, then launch into the content quickly.
Thank you. Well, Dr. Archer, we cannot thank you enough for the information that you have presented today and for your time and dedication to education. We thank you.
It is my gift. And go Michigan. Go UP. A total delight. Thank you so very much. We're gonna take a break now, aren't we?
We are. At this time, we'll be heading into the 5-minute break. When we return, we'll venture into the second half of our webinar, which we are going to delve. Yes, we are going to dive a little deeper into active participation and what that looks like in some Michigan classrooms. So with that, yes, we will see you back in 5 minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.